I canceled my GF's stay at a luxury resort that I paid for after she used my tickets to go W divided by her. I spent months saving every penny from my software engineering job to surprise my girlfriend Jasmine with a dream vacation to Hawaii. $8,000 for a luxury beachfront resort, private dining, and all the experiences she had always talked about. I still remember her tears of joy when I revealed the tickets, how she hugged me tight and promised it would be unforgettable. It certainly was unforgettable, but not in the way I expected. When I discovered she had replaced my name with someone named Ryan, everything changed. Let me know where you are watching from, and hit that like and subscribe if someone you trusted has ever betrayed you in ways you never saw coming. I have always been the type of guy who believes in working hard for what you want. At 32, I had built a decent career as a software engineer at a promising startup in Seattle. Growing up with parents who struggled to make ends meet taught me the value of money early on. I would put in 60-hour weeks at the office, taking on extra projects whenever possible. Not because I was trying to climb the corporate ladder, but because I wanted to create special moments for the people I cared about. That is why when I met Jasmine at my college friend Tom's housewarming party 2 years ago, I immediately knew she was someone worth investing in. She stood in the corner of the crowded living room, laughing at something someone had said, her curly hair catching the light. When our mutual friend introduced us, we discovered we both shared a passion for travel and trying foods from different cultures. Our conversation flowed effortlessly as we talked about places we wanted to visit someday. Jasmine mentioned Hawaii was at the top of her bucket list, describing how she had collected travel magazines featuring Maui since she was a teenager. What started as casual dating quickly became something more meaningful. In those early months, our relationship was balanced in the most beautiful way. I would surprise her with tickets to a food festival featuring cuisines from around the world, and she would leave sticky notes with sweet messages in my apartment. We were both putting in equal effort to make each other happy. Jasmine had this vibrant energy that pulled me in completely. She was spontaneous and adventurous, always suggesting we try new restaurants or take impromptu road trips on weekends. In contrast, I was more of a planner, researching destinations thoroughly and making sure we had reservations. Our differences complemented each other perfectly, or so I thought. On Saturdays, we would often go hiking in the mountains surrounding Seattle. Jasmine would point out wildlife I would have otherwise missed, while I made sure we had enough water and knew exactly which trail to take. During these hikes, she would sometimes mention tropical destinations she dreamed of visiting. I always paid attention, filing away these details for future reference. As our second anniversary approached, I wanted to do something truly special for Jasmine. She had been working hard at her marketing job, often coming home exhausted. She deserved a break from the daily grind, an escape to somewhere beautiful. That's when I decided to make her Hawaii dreams come true. For 6 months, I worked overtime, cutting back on personal expenses and putting every extra dollar into my vacation fund. I skipped lunches out with coworkers, canceled my streaming subscriptions, and even sold my gaming console. Every sacrifice seemed worth it when I thought about the look on Jasmine's face when I would finally reveal the surprise. I spent countless lunch breaks researching resorts in Maui, comparing amenities and reading reviews. Eventually, I found the perfect place, a luxury beachfront resort with rooms that opened directly onto the sand. The photos showed stunning ocean views, exactly what Jasmine had described from her magazines. At nearly $8,000 for a week, it was far more than I had ever spent on a vacation, but this was a special occasion. I didn't stop at just the hotel. I booked a private snorkeling tour to see sea turtles, reserved spots on a sunset dinner cruise, and arranged for a private dining experience on the beach under the stars. Each activity was carefully chosen, based on comments Jasmine had made throughout our relationship about things she wanted to experience. Keeping this secret was incredibly difficult. When Jasmine would suggest weekend plans, I had to make sure they wouldn't interfere with my overtime schedule. When she asked why I seemed distracted during dinner, I had to bite my tongue to keep from spilling the surprise. Every time she mentioned Hawaii in passing, I had to control my expression to not give anything away. As our anniversary approached, I arranged for us to have dinner at the upscale restaurant where Wed had our first official date. I placed the envelope containing the tickets and itinerary inside a guidebook of Hawaii, which I wrapped carefully and tucked into my jacket pocket. That night would change everything, though not in the way I had anticipated. The restaurant was packed when we arrived for our anniversary dinner. I had requested the same table we sat at on our first date, a quiet corner with a view of the twinkling city lights. Jasmine looked beautiful in a blue dress I had never seen before. She mentioned buying it specially for our anniversary, which touched me deeply. Throughout the appetizer and main course, I could barely concentrate on the food, knowing what was coming for dessert. When the waiter brought out a chocolate cake with congratulations written in caramel, I reached into my jacket and placed the wrapped guidebook on the table. Jasmine's eyes widened as she carefully unwrapped it. Confusion crossed her face momentarily until she opened the cover and the envelope fell out. As she read the itinerary and held the plane tickets, her expression transformed from confusion to absolute shock. Hawaii. For real, Eduardo, this is too much. She gasped, tears forming in her eyes. She reached across the table to grab my hand, squeezing it tightly. I cannot believe you remembered. This is literally my dream vacation. The way she looked at me in that moment made every extra hour of work, every sacrifice completely worth it. She asked question after question about the resort, the activities I had planned, seemingly genuinely thrilled about every detail. We spent the rest of dinner excitedly discussing what to pack and the places we would visit. That night, as we celebrated in more intimate ways back at my apartment, I felt closer to Jasmine than ever before. She whispered that I was the most thoughtful person she had ever known, that she did not deserve me. I remember thinking how lucky I was to have found someone who appreciated the effort I put into our relationship. The trip was scheduled for 6 weeks after our anniversary, giving us plenty of time to prepare. At first, everything seemed normal. Jasmine talked about the trip, constantly showing me swimsuits she was considering buying and downloading apps about Hawaiian culture and language. But about 3 weeks before our departure date, I began noticing subtle changes in her behavior. She started canceling our regular dinner dates, citing increased workload at her marketing agency. This wasn't completely unusual, as she sometimes had busy periods with client deadlines. But what struck me as odd was how vague she became about these work commitments. When I would ask what projects were keeping her so busy, she would give generic answers about client presentations and quickly change the subject. She also began keeping her phone face down when we were together, something she had never done before. A few times I noticed her smiling at text messages, but quickly putting her phone away when she saw me looking. I tried to dismiss these warning signs, telling myself I was being paranoid. Perhaps she was just stressed about work, or maybe planning some kind of surprise for our trip. I trusted Jasmine completely, so I pushed my concerns aside and focused on finalizing the last details for Hawaii. Then came the comment that first truly alarmed me. We were having Sunday brunch with our friend group when Alex, Jasmine's coworker, joined us. After a few mimosas, Alex mentioned how excited Jasmine seemed about going to Hawaii with someone named Ryan. There was an awkward silence at the table before Jasmine laughed it off, saying, "Alex must be confused about some other trip." She quickly changed the subject, but I noticed she avoided making eye contact with me for the rest of brunch. That evening, I asked Jasmine about Alex's comment. She dismissed it completely, saying that Alex probably mixed her up with another coworker named Jessica, who was also planning a Hawaii trip. It seemed plausible enough, and I wanted to believe her. A week before our scheduled departure, I called the resort to add a special welcome package to our room, a bottle of champagne and chocolate-covered strawberries to surprise Jasmine upon arrival. The conversation with the reservation clerk changed everything. "Of course, Mr. Rodriguez, I can add the welcome package, but I see here that Miss Thompson has already made some changes to the reservation," the clerk said casually. My stomach dropped. What kind of changes? It looks like she called last week to change the name of the second guest from Eduardo Rodriguez to Ryan Campbell. "Would you like me to update anything else about the reservation?" I somehow managed to thank the clerk and end the call, my mind racing. Who was Ryan Campbell? Why would Jasmine change my name on the reservation without telling me? I tried to think of innocent explanations, but none made sense. With shaking hands, I opened Instagram on my phone and went to Jasmine's profile. She had not posted anything recently, but when I checked her tagged photos, I found something that confirmed my worst fears. A mutual friend had posted pictures from a shopping trip the previous weekend, tagging Jasmine and several others. In the background of one photo, I could clearly see Jasmine holding up a floral shirt to a tall man I did not recognize. The caption mentioned helping Ryan shop for Hawaii. My entire body went cold. The betrayal was so obvious now that I could not believe I had missed the signs. I texted Jasmine asking to meet for coffee the next morning, struggling to keep my message casual. I needed to confront her face to face. The coffee shop was busy when Jasmine arrived 15 minutes late and looking slightly flustered. She greeted me with a quick kiss on the cheek before sitting down with her latte. We made small talk about her workday for a few minutes before I finally brought up what was really on my mind. "So I was thinking about our Hawaii trip," I said, watching her face carefully. "Is there anything you want to change about the itinerary before we go?" Her expression remained neutral. "No. Everything sounds perfect. You really thought of everything." I took a deep breath. "That's interesting because when I called the resort yesterday, they mentioned you had already made a change. You replaced my name with someone named Ryan Campbell." The color drained from Jasmine's face. She opened her mouth, then closed it again, clearly searching for words. "Eduardo, I can explain. It's not what you think." "Then what is it?" I asked, my voice surprisingly steady despite the storm raging inside me. "Ryan is just a friend from work. He really wanted to go to Hawaii, and I knew how busy you were with that big project at work. I thought you might actually be relieved to not take the time off." She reached for my hand, but I pulled it away. "You work so hard, Eduardo. I figured you could use the money for something else and you could always go to Hawaii another time." I stared at her in disbelief. "You thought I would be relieved I worked 60-hour weeks for 6 months to save for this trip. For us. How could you possibly think I would be okay with you taking someone else?" She began to cry, those same tears I had found so moving when I first gave her the tickets. But now they seemed manipulative, calculated. "I am so sorry. I did not think it through. Ryan and I are just friends, I promise. He has been wanting to see Hawaii forever, and it just seemed like it could work out for everyone." As she continued making excuses, she placed her phone on the table. When a notification lit up the screen, I caught a glimpse of a message from Ryan with heart emojis. Something inside me snapped. When Jasmine went to the bathroom, still wiping away tears, I did something I never thought I would do. I looked at her phone. The messages between her and Ryan told the complete story. They had been flirting for months. He was not just a coworker, but someone she had developed feelings for while we were still together. There were messages about how excited they were for their romantic getaway using the tickets I had worked so hard to purchase. There were even jokes about how oblivious I was to their growing relationship. When Jasmine returned to the table, she could tell from my expression that I knew everything. "You went through my phone, Eduardo. That is such a violation of privacy." The audacity of her trying to turn this around on me was the final straw. "A violation of privacy. You stole a vacation that I paid for to take another man, and you are worried about privacy." "We are done, Jasmine. Completely done." I walked out of the coffee shop without looking back, her calls of my name fading behind me as I stepped onto the busy street, my world completely shattered. I will never forget the feeling that washed over me as I left that coffee shop. It was like someone had reached inside my chest and crushed my heart with their bare hands. The physical pain was so intense that I had to sit down on a nearby bench, struggling to breathe normally. 2 years of memories, hopes, and dreams all felt tainted by this betrayal. That night was the first of many sleepless ones. I would lie awake replaying conversations and moments with Jasmine, wondering how long she had been lying to me. Had she ever truly loved me? Or was I just convenient until someone more exciting came along? The questions tortured me endlessly. My friends rallied around me when I told them what happened. Tom, whose party had introduced me to Jasmine, was particularly furious. Just ghost her completely, man. Block her number, delete her from social media, and move on with your life, he advised, during an impromptu gathering at his apartment. Sarah, another close friend, suggested I confront Ryan as well. He knew she was in a relationship with you. He is just as guilty, she insisted. But while I appreciated their support, none of their suggestions felt right to me. Simply walking away seemed too easy, too passive. This was not just an emotional betrayal, it was financial too. $8,000 represented countless overtime hours, missed social events, and personal sacrifices. Yet confronting Ryan would likely just lead to more drama without any resolution. For 3 days, I went through the motions of life in a fog of anger and hurt. I would go to work, stare blankly at my computer screen, then come home to an empty apartment that now seemed to echo with the absence of Jasmine. She had tried calling and texting dozens of times, alternating between apologies, justifications, and pleas for another chance. On the 4th day, after our confrontation, something shifted inside me. While making my morning coffee, I realized I had a choice. I could either let this betrayal define me, turning me bitter and mistrustful, or I could take back my power in a way that honored my self-respect. The idea came suddenly and clearly. I still owned the resort reservation, and the plane tickets were in my name originally. What if I could cancel Jasmine's access to the vacation I had paid for? It would be a perfectly reasonable response to her actions, not an act of revenge, but a reclamation of what was rightfully mine. I called the luxury resort that morning, reaching a different reservation manager than before. When I explained my situation, leaving out the emotional details and focusing on the facts, the manager was surprisingly sympathetic. "Mr. Rodriguez, since you are the original booking party and the payment came from your credit card, you have every right to modify this reservation," she explained. "We can cancel the current booking and create a new one in your name with a guest of your choosing. The original payment will transfer to the new booking." There was a small cancellation fee, but it felt like a small price to pay for taking back control of the situation. I asked the manager not to inform Jasmine of the change, explaining briefly that it was a sensitive personal matter. She assured me their system would simply show the original reservation as canceled if Jasmine called to check. With the resort situation handled, I turned my attention to the flights. This proved slightly more complicated, as Jasmine had already changed the name on one of the tickets. However, since I had originally purchased both tickets with my credit card, the airline allowed me to cancel them entirely for a partial refund and book a new ticket just for myself. My plan was coming together, but I faced an internal struggle. Part of me wanted to tell Jasmine immediately what I had done, to see the look on her face when she realized her deception had backfired. But a wiser voice within me suggested a different approach. If I really wanted to make an impact, I needed to let her discover it herself at the moment when it would matter most. So I made the most difficult decision of all. I pretended to forgive her. When Jasmine called that evening, instead of ignoring her as I had been doing, I answered. I told her I was still hurt, but was willing to talk things through. Over coffee the next day, I listened to her explanations and apologies with a neutral expression, occasionally nodding as if considering her words. I broke things off with Ryan completely. She claimed showing me texts as evidence. It was a stupid mistake, getting caught up in workplace flirtation. "You are the one I want to be with, Eduardo." I looked into her eyes, the same ones that had welled up with seemingly genuine tears when I gave her the Hawaii tickets, and saw only what I wanted to see. "I need time," I told her, "but I do not want you to cancel the Hawaii trip. You have been looking forward to it for so long." The relief on her face was immediate and unmistakable. She reached for my hand across the table, squeezing it gratefully. "Really? You are not going to ask for the tickets back?" I shrugged as if it were no big deal. "The money is already spent. Someone should enjoy it." Over the next 2 weeks, I maintained the facade of a boyfriend, working through betrayal but moving toward forgiveness. We did not see each other much, as I claimed to need space, but we texted regularly. Jasmine seemed to believe she had successfully manipulated the situation to get exactly what she wanted. She even had the audacity to ask me for advice about what to pack for Hawaii. "Do you think I need a light jacket for the evenings?" she texted 3 days before the scheduled departure. "The nights can get breezy by the water," I replied. "Better to have one just in case." What Jasmine did not know was that I had also been making my own preparations. I had taken a week off work matching the original vacation dates. I had asked my best friend David if he wanted to join me on a surprise trip without revealing the destination until he agreed. I had even bought new swimming trunks and sunglasses for our Hawaiian adventure. The day of departure arrived. Through social media updates from mutual friends, I knew Jasmine and Ryan had indeed gotten back together despite her claims otherwise. They had arrived at Seattle International Airport 3 hours before their flight, as evidenced by the coffee shop selfie Jasmine posted with the caption, "Adventure Time Hawaii Bound." I imagined them walking confidently to the check-in, counter passports and booking information in hand, the excitement of their romantic getaway written all over their faces. I pictured the exact moment when the airline representative would look at her computer screen, frown slightly, and say those beautiful words. "I'm sorry, but it seems your reservation has been canceled." David and I were already at a different terminal, checked in for our flight, leaving an hour after theirs was supposed to depart. I had chosen a different airline entirely to avoid any chance encounters. My phone buzzed continuously with increasingly frantic texts and calls from Jasmine. I let them all go to voicemail as David and I enjoyed overpriced airport coffees. Only after we had boarded our flight and were taxiing toward the runway did I finally respond with a single text. "I hope you and Ryan enjoy Hawaii. Unfortunately, the resort I paid for will not be part of your experience." I then blocked her number and all her social media accounts, finally free from the weight of her betrayal. As our plane lifted into the clouds, I felt a sense of lightness I had not experienced in weeks. The trip I had worked so hard for would still happen, just with someone who actually valued my friendship instead of someone who had taken my generosity for granted. From mutual friends, I later learned that Jasmine and Ryan had been stranded at the airport, frantically trying to book last-minute accommodations in Hawaii at prices far beyond what they could afford. They ended up canceling their trip entirely, their romantic getaway reduced to a costly and embarrassing failure. The moment our plane touched down in Maui, I felt the tension of the past weeks begin to melt away. The warm tropical air that greeted us as we exited the airport was exactly what I had imagined when planning this trip months ago. Only now, instead of Jasmine by my side, I had David, whose excitement and gratitude made me realize I had made the right decision. "Dude, I still cannot believe you brought me to Hawaii," David said as we picked up our rental car. "This is epic. Whatever I did to deserve this, remind me to do it more often." The luxury resort welcomed us with the same champagne and strawberry package I had originally ordered as a surprise for Jasmine. The irony was not lost on me as David and I toasted to friendship and new beginnings in our ocean view suite. The first few days were packed with activities I had originally planned, from snorkeling with sea turtles to watching the sunset from a catamaran. With each new experience, Jasmine faded further from my thoughts. On our third night in Hawaii, while relaxing on the beach after a day of exploring, David asked me if I regretted how I had handled the situation. "Sometimes the high road seems like the better option," he said. "Do you ever think you should have just let it go?" I considered his question carefully, digging my toes into the still warm sand. "The high road would have meant letting her take advantage of me one last time," I finally replied. "I worked too hard for this trip to let it become her romantic getaway with the guy she cheated with." This was not about revenge. It was about self-respect. David nodded, understanding. "Well, for what it's worth, I think you did the right thing. And selfishly, I am pretty glad you did not take the high road, or I would not be sitting on this beautiful beach right now." Throughout our stay, mutual friends kept me updated about the aftermath back home. Jasmine had apparently been telling anyone who would listen that I had cruelly tricked her, leaving her stranded at the airport after promising forgiveness. But our friends knew the full story, and most supported my actions. Even those who thought I had been too harsh acknowledged that Jasmine had brought it upon herself. More surprisingly, I learned that Jasmine and Ryan's relationship had deteriorated rapidly after the Hawaii debacle. Without the romantic backdrop of a luxury resort, their connection apparently could not withstand the stress of real life and the embarrassment of their failed trip. They broke up less than 3 weeks after returning from the airport. When we returned to Seattle tanned and refreshed, I decided it was time to make some changes. I started seeing a therapist to process the betrayal in a healthy way, recognizing that carrying anger would only hold me back. Dr. Martinez helped me understand that Jasmine's actions reflected her character, not my worth. People who betray others often try to justify their actions by blaming the person they hurt, she explained during one session. Your ex-girlfriend claiming you would not have enjoyed the trip anyway was her way of easing her guilt. It had nothing to do with you. These insights helped me gradually rebuild my ability to trust. I reconnected with friends I had somewhat neglected during my relationship with Jasmine, finding genuine support in those long-standing connections. I also grew closer to my family, spending more weekends visiting my parents and helping my father with projects around their house. I discovered new hobbies that brought me joy independently of any relationship. I joined a local rock climbing gym, finding both physical challenge and mental focus in scaling walls. I took cooking classes, learning to make dishes from countries I hope to visit someday. These activities became anchors in my life, reminding me that my happiness did not depend on a partner. 6 months after the Hawaii incident, I felt ready to consider dating again. My approach was much more cautious this time. I paid attention to how potential partners treated service workers, how they spoke about their exes, whether they respected my boundaries. These were all indicators of character I had previously overlooked in the excitement of new relationships. When I met Lucia at a friend's dinner party, I was immediately drawn to her warm smile and attentive listening skills. Unlike my early dates with Jasmine, which had been filled with grand gestures and intense emotions, my relationship with Lucia developed slowly and steadily. We built a foundation of honest communication and mutual respect before either of us made significant emotional investments. On our 5th date, I told Lucia about my experience with Jasmine and the Hawaii trip. I was nervous about sharing such a vulnerable story, worried she might see my actions as petty or vindictive. Instead, she reached across the table and took my hand. "It takes courage to stand up for yourself like that," she said. "So many people would have just absorbed the loss to avoid confrontation. I admire that you valued yourself enough to take action." Her response confirmed what I already suspected, that Lucia was someone who understood the importance of boundaries and self-respect in relationships. We continued dating our connection, deepening naturally without either of us trying to rush the process. A year after the betrayal, I realized I had reached an important milestone. I could think about Jasmine without feeling anger or pain. When a mutual friend mentioned running into her at a coffee shop, I felt nothing but a detached curiosity. The power she once held over my emotions was completely gone. The experience had changed me in fundamental ways. I became more discerning about who I allowed into my life and what behavior I would tolerate. I learned to recognize red flags early rather than dismissing them. Most importantly, I discovered that walking away from toxic situations is not a failure, but an act of self-preservation. If Jasmine taught me anything, it was that real love involves mutual respect and consideration. It is not just about grand gestures or emotional intensity, but about consistently choosing to honor your partner's feelings and boundaries. It is about supporting each other's growth rather than using each other for personal gain. Today, I can honestly say I am grateful for what happened. Not because I enjoy remembering the pain, but because that experience led me to build a much healthier and more authentic life. I have stronger friendships, a more genuine approach to dating, and a deeper understanding of my own worth. I even eventually forgave Jasmine, not because she deserved it or ever apologized sincerely, but because carrying resentment was exhausting. Forgiving her was the final step in freeing myself completely from her influence. Looking back on that luxury resort in Hawaii, I realized the most valuable souvenir I brought home was the knowledge that I am capable of standing up for myself, even when it is difficult. That understanding has been worth far more than the $8,000 I spent on the trip. Have you ever had to make a difficult decision to protect your self-respect in a relationship? Comment below with your experience. If this story resonated with you, please like and subscribe to hear more real-life lessons. And remember, sometimes the most important relationship to invest in is the one you have with yourself. Thank you for listening to my story, and I hope it helps someone who might be going through something similar right now.